you so much, Rhianna.
My pleasure.
So I'd love to know what inspired you and what made you decide to come to China.
Yeah.
Especially.
Okay, so that's kind of a funny story, or not really, whatever. So before I lived in China, I lived in Japan, and I was there for 4 years. So in my 4th year of living in Japan, I was really interested in something new. I felt like I had reached the maximum amount of years I wanted to be there, and so I was looking for other opportunities. China was not on the map for me. You know, I was looking elsewhere in Asia and even the Middle East, just really trying to see what opportunities were available for me in education, basically. But I came across a post for the company that I'm with now, and I thought, oh, this seems interesting. This seems like something I might like. Let me at least, put in my interest or application and see how it goes. And I had the interview, and I immediately felt a connection with the people I interviewed with, who were basically the co-CEOs at the time. And then next thing I knew, I ended up here. So yeah, China was not necessarily a planned thing, so to speak, but I'm happy that is where I ended up.
Okay. Yeah. So I've seen you graduated from San Francisco. Why did you decide just to work in your hometown?
Yeah.
And why go abroad?
Exactly. From a very young age, I have been very much involved with traveling. So, when I was younger, my family would go different places for vacations around the world, and so I have always been exposed to, different places, and I sort of developed a love for that. So even before I was able to, I would tell my parents, like, why don't I go to school in another country for 8th grade? And they'd be like, what are you talking about? Exactly. So
with your friends and people you're comfortable with.
Exactly. And I'm the youngest and I'm the only girl. So that was definitely not even possible. My parents were like, are you crazy?
No way.
Exactly. Yeah. So once I was old enough to do things on my own, I pretty much had already decided that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to branch out and just see more of the world. So even before I had moved to Japan, I lived in Sweden. And part of living in Sweden was sort of figuring out how to be more involved in global education. That's what I studied in Sweden when I was there for a year. So it was kind of my trajectory from a very young age as far as trying or wanting to broaden my horizons and not, just stick close to home. So, yeah.
That's nice. Tell us a little bit about your career. What exactly do you do?
Yeah, so personally what I do, I'm in education. I work for an education consulting firm, but my role in the company is basically to help students who want to study abroad, kind of like how I did, but who are not yet quite ready or prepared enough to go. And so sometimes students come to us from a very young age with the hopes or intentions of eventually going to the US. And so they can work with counselors here in our company to develop their skills over time. And so in my role in that is more or less so working on developing the fundamentals of English. So a little bit of teaching combined with consulting and other departments. Yeah.
Understood. So how did that manifest into your extracurricular activities, which are very vibrant?
Yeah. Yes. So, are you talking about Opopo?
Opopo magazine, Black Panther, luxury travel, so much.
Right?
Yes.
So basically, I have always been a people person, as I see it. Even when I was in Sweden and Japan, and before that, when I was a younger age, I would always be that person that's kind of like, hey guys, let's get together and do something. Let's, do that. So event management or leadership or what have you has been things that I've always sort of naturally been involved with. But I think coming to China really put me in unique spaces in order to do that more, let's say, profoundly. I don't know. So when I first came to China 5.5 years ago, I was a bit disappointed with the portrayal of Black people in media. And I can remember distinctly there were some specific advertising campaigns that were very disparaging. You know, there was one, I don't know if you remember or heard about it, there was one where they put a Black man in the washing machine and then he came out clean. And I was just like, really? That, you know, that was just one such case. But then there were like true stories where you would talk to people and they would say, you know, like, I was on the subway and this person was just calling me names and, you know, bullying me basically. And it got to be a lot. So I just said to myself, you know, what is something that I can do to actually counter that? Because I don't like feeling like this is the hand that I'm dealt and I don't have an option.
Play a victim.
Exactly. So I'm like, how can we counter that trend? And that's basically how Opopo was born. It was also around the time that the Black Lives Matter movement was gaining ground in the US, and there was a movement kind of coming to the surface here in Beijing, but you know, we were somewhat limited in what we could do, you know, like not protesting or doing big gatherings and things. So I definitely saw the magazine as an opportunity to kind of counter what I saw as negative trends towards the community, while also using it as a platform to do events or different things. And so that's basically how Opopo has grown from just a magazine to doing things like Black Panther and traveling and, you know, things here and there. So, yeah.
Especially Black Panther, that was really huge. Can you just tell us a little bit about that, the process and everything about Black Panther?
I mean, it's kind of funny because, to be honest, I'm not like a huge Marvel fan. You know, I haven't been watching Marvel since I'm a little kid and have action figures, no. But when I first got wind of the fact that there was going to be a superhero movie featuring an African hero and featuring Africa and Africans in a positive light, I'm like, it's a no-brainer.
Exactly.
It's a no-brainer. Exactly. So I was keeping my ear to the ground and researching and finding out, okay, is it really happening? And then I looked at the character. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Why haven't I heard about this before now? But then, of course, there was the sort of fear that I had, which was, is this even going to come to China? Because you know, exactly, not every foreign film makes it to China. And I just was like, man, I remember thinking that Star Wars had come to China. But I remember when the posters came out, they had removed the Black guy from a prominent position and put him either somewhere way in the background or he wasn't even appearing. And I remember distinctly feeling like, man, if they're removing a Black guy from the China poster of Star Wars, excuse me, what's the likelihood that they're gonna have a Black superhero movie of all? But you know, so it was a tense moment for me. But once I started to get confirmation from Chinese websites that it was coming, though it was coming later, I said it's actually gonna happen. It's absolutely gonna happen. So that was sort of like the background leading up to the process, and then from there I just thought, well, I'm just gonna go call a theater and say, can I rent out a theater and make a production of it? And luckily I happened to meet a very good now friend of mine who actually I just met this past weekend. We went and saw Green Book together. So yeah, I think that it was, you know, God's intervention leading me to the right place at the right time. I literally called, I want to say over 20 theaters, and no one was picking up. You know, I would call and it was just ring and go to voicemail, and I started to get discouraged and think, okay, well maybe I have to go in person and try to figure this thing out.
Sometimes you have to in China.
Right? You cannot give up. But thankfully, I ended up calling and reaching the woman at the Tiananmen Square Theater, right? Wasn't that amazing? So that's how things developed, and I think it was just a momentous time for the community just to celebrate everything about us and to see us being celebrated on the big screen and having everyone dress up and just feel so proud. It really did my soul so good, and yeah. Now I'm ready for Black Panther 2, so we can do it again.
Yes, of course, we're excited. So now, in conclusion, tell us about your most recent project, which is luxury travel.
Yeah.
I think it was with Thrive.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So I basically had an idea. You know, as I was saying before, I've kind of always been that person that's like, hey, let's do things together and traveling. And I'd done something before, traveling with a group of people in China. I'd actually planned large-scale events in Japan as well for like 80 teachers across all of Japan, you know, those kinds of things, right? So I'm like, why don't I continue to do that here? And Bali is a place I'd already been, I'm familiar with, and I'm saying, well, you know what, I want to go to Bali, so why not make it a group trip and do it well? And then Thrive reached out, they're like, yeah, we would love to partner. I'm like, this is great, because Thrive and I have always been talking about partnering for different things and just hadn't worked out up until that time. So then the opportunity presented itself and it just worked out beautifully. We ended up being 17 people and we were graced by yours truly as well.
Thank you.
It was phenomenal. The group of people were just, you know, and weren't just in Beijing. We had people coming from Shenyang and I want to say Chongqing, Inner Mongolia. Yes, Guangzhou, even from the States. We had a gentleman come from the States. And so it was people from all over, so to speak, just coming together. And not everybody knew everybody. Like even myself, I didn't know everyone. Right. And so, you know, when you're planning such a thing like that, you're always worried about how our personality is going to clash. How are people
spending so much time?
Exactly. But I think the people who came needed to be there because there was no drama, there was no, you know, issues. It was just, it was beautiful from start to end, and I just couldn't have asked for a better group of people, honestly. So, yeah,
that's amazing.
It was.
Finally, we have to congratulate you on the event that was the epitome of the travel. Congratulations, Rhianna.
Thank you.
Her proposal was in Bali at the Luxury.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Rhianna.
It's my pleasure.